together.
Thanks for saying that. And we got here about half an hour ago, and we're sort of standing there over the edge. We haven't really had the experience of watching the movie play. And you know, this whole adventure started by Nick and I sort of cracking each other up, and so somewhere along the way things got incredibly serious. And I just have to say, it was literally like music to our ears just to watch an audience react to it. So thank you guys so much for, you know, coming out tonight. Obviously, it's a big deal, given like the state of play, to just come to a theater and enjoy a movie, and we're profoundly appreciative for you guys watching it. And I'll just say that, you know, that we did have a lot of fun writing the movie and a lot of fun making the movie, and the idea that it was supposed to be a satire, it was supposed to be taken, it was so over the top and ridiculous and absurd, was always kind of at the top of mind. I do think now that people are getting the opportunity to see the movie, the only negative thing that we're starting to hear is people are a little disappointed that it's not more controversial. But I think that for a movie with such a high death toll, it's kind of harmless.
Yeah, and you set that tone right from the beginning. As soon as they get to the place, the crate, I mean, obviously there's a scene in the plane, but when they get to the crate, there's the blonde-haired woman, and they start shooting. She's like, oh, they almost hit me. And then the next thing you know is her head explodes across the screen, which a round of applause this audience gave. So you're in safe hands. Was the intent always to make it as insane as possible, to point out the insanity that we're dealing with today? Like, what was the thought process?
I think it was really just like trying to outdo each other, sitting across from each other at a table, and just trying to sort of be more of a psycho than Damon in my case. Like, just try to cross the line in terms of just, that's really messed up, and like I'm a little disturbed to be friends with you. Like, genuinely, I mean, the politics stuff came later, I think, and it was a texture that was obviously hugely important to it, but it really just started out like us trying to surprise each other.
There was a quote that I read from Craig Sobel, the director, and it was in an interview, and they said, oh, is this film anti one side or the other? And he said, this film is anti everybody. Was that the intent as you were writing?
It's pro-Crystal, for sure.
It's definitely pro-Crystal, yeah.
Very pro-Crystal.
Yeah, we wanted the movie to be as you know, as fair and balanced as possible. We obviously, I think that this, you know, the last thing that we ever wanted to do was make a message movie or wag our fingers or have people say, like, what do you think the moral of that movie was? I think if anything, this movie trolls the idea of a moral. That, you know, Crystal tells this story about the tortoise and the hare, and she basically says, like, and here's what would actually happen at the end of that story. And I think that that's more true to form, and, you know, in terms of the way that we experience each other. And fundamentally, we live in this bubble. If there's one thing about this idea of, like, we're all on different sides, is that, you know, I identify as a coastal elite, and so it was much easier for me to make fun of myself and the people that I spend time with than it is for the people that I don't. And so we tried to weight the movie accordingly. And again, you know, like I have heard from some of my friends who have seen the movie, like, you went a little bit hard on us. That made me feel like, okay, we probably got it right then.
I think so. The line that got it real raw, the older couple, when they're in the gas station and they're going back and forth, and they go, yeah, we're the fucking worst. And it's like, it's so true. What was, when you submitted the script on this, did you always think about Jason for this, taking it to Jason Blum? It's produced by Blumhouse Pictures. Production, I should say. Did you think about Jason first? Was knowing his sensibilities within the genre space?
Yeah, I mean, I really think Damon and I were in the editing room, I think, or at lunch on the second to last Leftovers episode, which we both wrote. And I asked him sort of what he might be interested in doing next, and he's like, I always love to just write a Blumhouse movie. You know, we could write it in like 3 weeks, and like someone could direct it. So that's what it's like to be David Lindelof. That's a little insight into his experience going through the world.
It's certainly not as pleasant as that, trust me. But it took a little bit longer than 3 weeks. But you know, we love Jason Blum movies, and I think that particularly with The Purge and then with Get Out, the idea that you could you could do some sort of satire or social commentary inside like a great genre movie, where there is this part of us. All humans that loves to watch other humans get killed. Like, it goes back to the gladiator days. And the great thing about a movie is it's all pretend. Like
the first time you play Grand Theft Auto, it's just so unbelievable. You just want to run over every single person on the street with your car. The first get another car and then run over everyone else.
On TV, when we kill off a character, it's this incredibly deliberate process, and there's like all these consequences, and you have to talk about what the stakes are, and then the next episode is everybody is mourning them, and we were just like, it would just be fun to make a movie where you're just killing people the entire time, and you don't have to do any of that.
Did this allow you just to let rip then? Because I mean, like, you talk about something like Death, right? I think about something like Leftovers, which is an incredible show, impeccably crafted, beautifully written, but you mourn everything in that. Like, it weighs on you. This is the complete opposite. Was writing this in some part of reaction to that? Was it letting go? Was there some catharsis in you? Or was it just like, it's time to just go hog wild?
Well, I have yet
such a good question.
I have yet to come across a single person who would describe the experience of watching The Leftovers as fun or escapist. And there was definitely a part of us that was feeling that need. But I also think these movies, Jason's movies or the genre movies that I grew up on, they are not, they are not easy to do. It's not this idea of this is hard and this is easy. I actually think that while Nick and I started having conversations about what would eventually be this movie, it did take a long time to sort of figure it out, and you kind of realize when you're trying to reverse engineer a movie like this, how tricky it is to get it right. And I think that also that the idea of trying to kind of bring in, some elements of comedy or the thriller aspect, like this idea of needing to choose a lane. These are genre elements that we weren't necessarily as comfortable with working on The Leftovers. The absurd space, we got comfortable with Craig doing these international assassin episodes of The Leftovers, and that's why he felt like he was the perfect fit for a movie like this.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about genre, because I think about key movies in particular, things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the tow bill on the back of, that was the reaction for him to Vietnam. You have Romero, who's making Dawn of the Dead, so these are social commentaries. This is in a lineage, and then as you come forward, a couple of weeks ago we just screened The Invisible Man, which is a pretty potent statement on domestic violence, and then thinking about Blum, Get Out, the statement that films make, this sits within that world. Were you digging into those types of materials as you were researching and then just kind of formulating ideas for this?
Well, I mean, I remember reading this thing once that I loved, and I forget who it was. I think it was Michael Mann. He was just I figure out the theme when I'm doing press. and he was kind of being flippant, I thought, at the time. But then when we've been talking about this movie a little bit, the idea that horror movies reflect the fears of our time, it had never occurred to me to apply that to The Hunt until, the last week. But I was like, oh yeah, I think I am a little scared that if there's not a world war for 50 or 60 years, we're all just going to kill each other. That's where we're headed. So I think weirdly the thematic thing sort of was there all along, and I didn't even quite fully realize it myself.
What is the theme of Miami Vice, though? Michael Mann.
High style, that's what the theme is. It's beautiful. So I want to read, I want to quote someone, and he can remain nameless for now, but he tweeted, he tweeted that this film was made in order to inflame and cause chaos. these are the real racists. That came from, you know, that guy that loves to tweet. What happened? What happened when you learn about this? Where were you? Damn it, you're in the Bahamas, right? Didn't your son like grab you or something?
Yeah. So we had been working on Watchmen for a year and a half, and my son.
Can I just put? Can we have a round of applause for Watchmen?
We were working on the show forever, and you know, when you're in deep on particularly the first season of a television show, it's very immersive, and so I was just away from my family a lot, and sort of like my son had 4 days off from school coming up a couple months down the road, and I was like, we'll go wherever you want. I'm gonna, you know, we'll be in post. I'll slip out of the editing room, and we'll go wherever you want. And then like a commercial for Atlantis with all the crazy water slides came on like 2 minutes later. And he's like, we're going there. And I was like, okay, I will go on crazy water slides with you, because there's nothing sadder than a 47-year-old man walking around shirtless at a water park. But you know, I said anywhere, and so that's what we did. And so this week, that essentially there were these horrific shootings in El Paso and Dayton, which was horrible. And we got on the phone with Jason and Universal executives, and the decision was made, maybe it is not appropriate to have the commercials for The Hunt running in the midst of this news cycle. And so the movie still wasn't coming out for another 6 weeks. And in the midst of those conversations, we were going to have a test screening for the sort of the finished product of the movie the following Tuesday, and we were like, should we have the test screening? And someone much smarter and higher paid than we said, we should do it. We should have the test screening, because if the audience says this movie is inappropriate, it's in bad taste, in proximity to a real-world event like that, we should just pull it. So we all agreed that this audience of 500 people was ultimately going to determine the Hunt's fate. And so we screened it on a Tuesday night. It tested, pretty well. And then afterwards, they had a focus group of everybody who saw it, and they asked them, do you think it was appropriate for us to show the movie? And they seemed kind of befuddled and offended by the question. They were like, it's a movie. Like, what does this have to do with what happened there? No. And so we were like, cool. And the very next morning, I was on a plane off to Atlantis. And so our rule was we weren't going to have phones. We're going to like sort of detach from the real world. I told my wife that I would call her every night to say goodnight, but otherwise we were just going to go on crazy water slides all day. And so that's what we did the first day. I called my wife, said goodnight. Second day we're doing that, and my son says, can I please check my phone? Like, you know, I'm in a text thread, my friends are, I'm having FOMO, like, and I'm like hanging up like our wet bathing suits in the bathroom, and he comes in and he says, hey, the president just tweeted about your movie. And I said, ha ha. And he goes, no, Dad, really? And that was my first understanding. I sort of missed the entire run-up to it. And I was confused at, being called like, the real racists. I didn't know what racism had to do with anything, and then we called Jason, and essentially he sort of filled us in on what I had missed. It was delightful.
Buddy.
Yeah, he buddied me.
Yeah.
Buddy. Not good.